This is Ed Stetzer Live. My name's Ed Stetzer. I'm your radio host this and every Saturday at this time. And it's good to have you, good to join with you, good to have a conversation with you as well. I'm going to share the number and some other things as we kind of move forward together. But let me tell you a little bit of a story. So I'm not a particularly artistic individual, and I don't know. I don't think of myself as one who relates well with the topic today. I know that's quite a caveat. The guest is a friend of mine. He's going to be okay. But I want you to know that I don't really think that way. I don't look. I don't. My wife and I were in. I'm trying to remember where we were. I think we're in Rome. I think we were at the Vatican, just doing the tour. And while we were there, we came up to this picture of the Transfiguration. It's a powerful picture of the Transfiguration. And we walked up to it, and Donna was just struck by it. And I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was amazing. But Donna was struck by it. And the end result was she was just sort of like weeping there. And she said, man, we need to get this at our house. And I thought, well, I really can't get that picture from the Vatican at our house. But she was really talking about a reproduction. But it was just a beautiful picture that struck her. She's a deeply spiritual person. She really walks in beautiful spiritual life. And again, I'm deeply committed to the Lord. Art has not always drawn me, but I realized this was a few years ago, and Don and I drove. I was in Phoenix speaking at some denominational meeting, and Donna, she's also the spiritedness and the spur of the moment person in the relationship. She says, "Hey, why don't we got some time. We were there a day early." She said, "Let's go to the Grand Canyon." And so we did, and we didn't actually do what you should do when you go to Grand Canyon. First of all, realize that when it's warm in Phoenix, it could be freezing and snowing in the Grand Canyon, and it was. Roads were closed and more, but we went up there. We eventually got there, but you couldn't see anything in the Grand Canyon. It basically looked like I don't know. You walk up to the edge of the Grand Canyon, and it looked like there was just a cloud placed in it. All you could see is a cloud. So we went to bed that night and woke up the next morning, went out just for breakfast. Can we see anything? Nope. Still just like a cloud sitting in. Couldn't see a thing. Like really, you could walk up to the edge, but even that had a lot of cloud and fog, I guess we'd say. So anyway, we were about to leave, and as we were turning around, we heard some people go, oh, and when we turned back around, there was this wind that had come, and it had blown the cloud. You could see it was still there, but we could see it was like a shower curtain in a shower being moved to the side. And there everybody sat in awe and realized beauty is a thing, of course, created by our Creator. In this case, like literally created by our Creator. Not with an intermediary who might create a beautiful painting like Donna was in awe of or more. And so I was actually interested when our guest today wrote this book. You see, I should tell you, I know him. Like he sort of almost worked for me in a dotted line relationship when we were doing something called the Gospel Project. He's kind of an interesting duck, and I didn't see coming this book by you. Matt Capps he's a senior pastor of Fairview Baptist Church in Apex, North Carolina. MDiv from Southeastern, authored and contributed several books, including his new book, Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. Okay, Matt, this was like a whole secret part of you that I did not know about in all of our smack talking that we've taken place of over the last few years. So first, thanks and welcome thanks for joining us here on Ed Stetzer Live.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Ed. I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk about this.
I really didn't see this coming, my friend. So where was this side of you all these years?
Yeah, so just a brief biography. My dad is a watercolor artist, Alan Capps, and my parents put me in art lessons at a very young age, and went to the university to study art, got my degree in graphic design. And when I went to seminary, I had this moment on a seashore, actually on the beach, where just this overwhelming sense of beauty that I was experiencing, and I was having trouble. I am this guy that's about to master divinity, if you will, and I didn't know what to do with a beautiful experience. And so it kind of drove me into this study of beauty and aesthetics and art and its place in the Christian life, and ended up going to Gordon Conwell Seminary and did a Doctor of Ministry project on beauty and spiritual formation. And so what you have in this book is really over a decade of thinking and working through this just in my own personal life and theologically.
Okay, but when we were at Lifeway together, were you like secretly going down to the archives in the Sullivan Building where it had all that art, or I mean, because again we were working on content. We were I mean we there were illustrations in the Gospel Project and more, but I just didn't see
Yeah.
like any of this. So was this just something a secret interest for you, or what?
Yeah, it's always been an interest, and
Or am I just unaware of all the things the teams were doing?
you were just unaware. In fact, you and I had a
Figures.
passing conversation about Caravaggio one time, and you said we'll pick this up
Oh.
later. And so now that we're, a decade down the road, I guess here we are having a
You've been
conversation.
holding it. You've been ready for this. So okay.
I've been wait, this
So are
book
you a
is for
big
you, Ed.
Caravaggio fan?
Oh, I love Caravaggio. Yeah, the his paintings are so dramatic. The contrast of light and darkness. I mean, he was just one of the masters. And yeah, get that same sense.
Yeah, well, I have my only interest in art is actually in Baroque art, and so Caravaggio is of course one of the early and controversial in a
Yeah,
pioneer in the Baroque school. So, which
yeah.
actually, fun fact, the largest collection of Baroque art is actually stored on the campus of Bob Jones University, which is a very since it's a Counter Reformation art form that they just became collectors of when nobody thought it was awesome, and now everyone thinks it's awesome. So there's a fun fact that I bet most
Uh,
people don't know.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so you write this book, and is this also your DMin dissertation that you turn into a book?
A lot of the research out of the D-Men came into this book, but this book's a much more polished reflection on the topic. And again, this was
Cool.
written even years after my dissertation. So yeah,
Oh, good. I
yeah,
like it. I like it. So it's drawn by beauty, awe, and wonder in the Christian life. And just so everybody knows, we're going to give away some copies of the book. Now, again, every time I say this, and some people like they don't pay attention to this, we don't just call up and say, "I want a copy of the book." It's to brilliant callers with questions and comments, which could very well be you, is often you. And we're going to talk about some of these things as well. Okay, so this is not something, Matt, that we're evangelicals, you and me. You and I are low church evangelicals. You and I are kind of
yeah,
Reformed Baptists. And this is not like when we think of the Reformation. Well, in the parts that were sort of the Reformed Calvin side of the Reformation, art didn't play a big part in that. We think about Baptists don't. I mean, you go to Baptist church, you don't. Sometimes you see stained glass, but nowadays mostly you don't even see that. So how do
hmm
you, this low church evangelical, end up in this space? Give us some more of your journey.
yeah. So as I'm studying these topics, as I'm looking into beauty and aesthetics, I realized that in the Protestant evangelical space, you could say, if you want to use some Disney analogies here, beauty has become the theological beast or the Cinderella stepsister to truth and goodness in the Christian life. And our Catholic friends have done just great work in this area. There's only one Baptist I know of from in recent years prior to this becoming more of a topic that we speak of, like Francis DeBose, his old book, The God Who Sins,
Yeah,
a mission book. He has a whole section on aesthetics.
he does.
And so I remember reading that and thinking, okay, here's at least one Baptist here that's dealing with it. But as I began looking through this, I thought I'd like to offer a book that is conversant with the academy, but accessible to the church. I think these topics of beauty and aesthetics and art can be really helpful and formative for the church, putting beauty back like in its rightful place in this conversation regarding theology. And so that was really the driving motivation behind this entire project. I'm grateful that B&H Academic took me up on it and allowed me to kind of work through this. But yeah, there's been a neglect of beauty in the Christian life for many years for various reasons, and some of those have to do with kind of a fear of idolatry. Right, we've developed this deep aversion to beauty and aesthetics. In fact, if you even go back to Israel's history, apart from Scripture, the Israelites left no artifacts compared to other societies. Right, and I think that the idolatry, the disordered affections, is kind of a fear that's been deeply rooted in the Christian tradition. And you mentioned the Reformation. This is why Martin Luther's students, if you will, began to smash statues and whitewash murals in the churches. Right, the iconoclast movement. So you have that. You have the fear of idolatry. I think we also have to deal with asceticism in modern spirituality. This dichotomy between the spiritual and the physical realms, the immaterial and the material. Christians have been deeply suspicious of the very things in which beauty finds its initial meditation, if you will, like the body and the senses. We don't know what to do with it. And then finally, I would say in our modern church, utilitarianism has become kind of the driving force. And what I mean by that is in our consumeristic society, we value usefulness, utility over everything else. And so what do we do? I mean, how does a beautiful painting or a symphony help us climb the ladder at work, right? There's the utility there. Even our buildings, if you will, that we don't have the beautiful adornment that we might see in a cathedral or in days past. And so I think there's a lot of factors feeding into this conversation that really motivated me to write in such a way that I wanted to bring this topic back into the vernacular of the local church.
Fascinating. Okay, good. We're going to continue our conversation in just a second, and actually also take your calls. Let me remind you of our phone number. It is 877-548-3675. Again, it's 877-548-3675. And maybe you want to talk about beauty. You have questions about its place in the church. You have questions about how can Christians appreciate beauty. And the title of the book is Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. Matt Capps is our guest, or we used to call him at Lifeway Mad Capps. And so he's our guest today. Again, our number one more time, 877-548-3675. Stetzer Live. I don't know that I introduced myself at the beginning. I am the Dean of the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. And actually, fun fact, Matt Capps, we actually have the Malcolm Initiative for the arts. They focus on evangelism and missions in the arts. And so we're very excited about some things. And we have a pretty diverse thing. On April 14th, we're doing the First Hymn Project, which is a recreation of a hymn that was discovered in a papyrus in Egypt. It was discovered recently, but I think it goes back to 250 A.D., and we've recreated the melody. Chris Tomlin will actually release the song on April 14th. The live documentary will be at Biola University on April 14th, and our students will learn to sing a song. Because the thing they found from 250 A.D. it's the oldest hymn with musical notations ever found. And so we actually, Ben Fielding and Chris Tomlin took those musical notes, and this is what they do. They always add to a song. Well, in this case, they had to. So it's not like Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, but it's actually, so for the first time in 1,700 years, our students will learn this song on April 14th. That's an expression of art. We recently commissioned some things on campus, because again, it's not, I don't think art just needs to be for evangelical missions. This happens to be the Malcolm Initiative for evangelism and mission. So I'm learning. My daughter's an opera singer. You know that. She lives now down in Charlotte. So I'm learning, Matt. I'm learning to appreciate. I confessed early on that I'm just not a particularly arty individual, but I've learned on some of these things. Okay, so we're going to jump into some calls, and let's go first to Bonnie in Lombard, Illinois. Bonnie, I'm really interested in your topic. Jump right in.
Yeah, I've got a comment, and that is, I don't know if your guest has really researched Calvin's understanding of the arts, and especially of why the churches were stripped. And the churches were stripped because Calvin taught that that Christ comes simple and unadorned. And so, therefore, the simplicity of Christ, the Christians also need to be simple and unadorned. The church needs to be simple and unadorned. Calvin did not reject the arts in the home and in the public square, but he said the word needs to be central, and that he didn't want anything distracting from it. Now, people can argue at that point, but I think it's really important that that this all starts in Christology. It starts with a Christ who comes simple, and so if Christ comes simple, he does this because you don't have all the symbolism and rich embellishment of the Old Testament worship, because now you have Christ present. You don't have Christ absent in all the symbolism. So now, because you have Christ present, you just need the simple word preached. This is a really important point to this whole thing about the arts. So you get
right.
people
So
like
whereas
Rembrandt.
You're saying he was not saying that he couldn't you couldn't have beautiful art in the home. And Bonnie, you didn't tell us at the beginning, but you told the call screener you're a scholar and you've written in this field. So I just want Matt Capps to know that our callers on Ed Stetzer Live are next level. So go ahead and finish what you're going to say, Bonnie.
Yeah, I mean, there's an unpublished paper that I gave at ETS on beauty and splendor in Calvin's Christology, and in the church, actually Calvin's ecclesiology and his understanding of Christology in that. So, but it needs yet to be published. I just haven't pushed it. But this is really important because it affects everything. His preaching on this topic and his writing on this topic. If you read in his commentaries, for example, on the birth of Christ, he talks about how the heavens are displayed, in the glory of the star, and the magi are coming, but yet Christ is humble in a simple crib, and wrapped in swaddling clothes, which are basically rags. And when you look at him in the when Christ goes into the Palm Sunday on his ride into Jerusalem the week before he dies, how he's on a borrowed ass. I mean, what king gets on a borrowed ass? What you have, kings rode on horses with footmen and everything else. But what does he have? He has borrowed cloaks thrown over the back of the donkey, and it's a mockery to somebody in the Middle Ages of a king. And so what you have is this theme of simplicity. And he says the reason this is because if he came as in splendor and glory and all the trappings, you wouldn't understand he's a spiritual king. Because he's a spiritual king, he's stripped of his glory. And that's
well, let's have Matt weigh in on that. I think that's okay. Bonnie, super call. I want you to stay on the line though as well, because we want to give you a copy of the book. It's actually Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. And I'm just saying, Matt, you go on radio, you don't get calls like that on other shows, but here on Ed Stetzer Live, I'm telling you, the best callers ever. So Bonnie's throwing down that, we have to properly understand where Calvin was coming from. Did you engage in around that? Any thoughts of that?
Yeah, I mean, my primary, the people I was interacting with were primarily Augustine, Aquinas, Luther, and Balthasar. But to speak to that point in particular, it reminds me of Isaiah 53, where it speaks of Messiah who doesn't have an impressive form or majesty that we should look at him, no appearance that we should desire him. And I think about this conversation of beauty as much more than adornment and skin deep, if you will. I think when we think about someone's beauty, we often look at the observations about their physical attractiveness. But apart from the transfiguration of Christ, we really have no information regarding his appearance. And so I think what Bonnie's getting at is a helpful point here, because God is not required to conform his self-revelation to our worldly notions of beauty. And the beauty of Christ is so much deeper in his teaching, his miracles. The cross of Christ itself is an affront to our natural aesthetic sensibilities, if you will, but it's beautiful in the sense that it's salvific, it's for salvation, and it's redemptive. And so I think the idea, the trajectory here would be the word of Christ is central. The word being preached is central in the church. But I think, I guess I would say, when it comes to adornments in the church, whether it's paintings or embellishments, things of that nature, if you rightly index them under the word, and again, there's discussion back and forth in the Reformed tradition on this as well. I think there's more conversation to be had there, but I would wholeheartedly agree with Bonnie here that Christ himself, the word being preached, is central in the church when it comes to this conversation.
Fascinating. And I do think it's, we even started the show talking a little bit about, I think, your appreciation of Baroque art. I know my appreciation of Baroque art, which was actually a counter-Reformation art expression. The Protestant Reformation had sort of, think about Luther, the Theses, followed up with others like Calvin and others. And really, what the Roman Catholic Church did is they said, you're going to downplay these things. We're going to make the most beautiful, colorful, emotional, dramatic, movement-oriented art ever. And so, which is one of the reasons I like it. It's just very stunning. in its appearance. But all this is kind of tied around religion and the perception, or maybe not just the perception, because in churches, as Bonnie said, in churches that was true, particularly in more the Reformed churches, which became very much simplified, simple, stripped down, and more. So I mean, why don't we just meditate on the simplicity? I want to say to others too. We're going to get to you in just a second, Lori, in Grand Rapids. We're going to come over to Anthony in just a second in Wheaton. But help me to understand, like, why not just say, let's just meditate on the beauty and the simplicity of Christ and the cross?
Yeah, well, I think you have to have the word in its right place in this conversation. And Bonnie mentioned Psalm 19 in passing, the heavens declare the glory of God. What's going on there is we have general revelation, if you will. God has made himself known through the things that he's made, Romans 1. And actually that word there is a composite for where we get poem. So in the poem of creation, we have a sense that there is a divine artist, a maker, right? He has made himself known. His invisible attributes, that is his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen through what he has been made. But that general revelation is nonverbal. It doesn't provide the key for its own interpretation, if you will. And that's where special revelation, God's revealed word, the Bible, plays a distinct clarifying role in understanding the beauty of the world. Again, God has chosen to enrich our lives by disclosing his power through the waking beauty of, like you mentioned, the Grand Canyon. He has created, endowed human beings to create beautiful things, creators, really mimicking the creative God we have. We have this charged with the grandeur of God, and yet it's the scripture that helps us rightly index that. Like the beauty we experience in creation, the beauty we experience in standing before a Renaissance master's magnum opus, those are all signposts or spiritual smelling salts, if you will, to wake us up to all the wonderful, rich experiences God has given us that should prompt us back to him, back to worship him. So that's why I keep saying rightly index, right? Because beautiful things do have the temptation to pull us into idolatry, but we have to see them, as Jonathan Edwards said, as emanations of the sweet benevolence of Jesus Christ, right? So God has given us these things for our enjoyment and to display his goodness to us. So I think, when you think about the simplicity of things, I think there's right environments and right times in our lives where we can lean towards the simplistic or enjoy the more dramatic, or if you will, the flair in the arts. So I think that's a whole nother conversation in a sense. But
you
I
keep
hope
saying
that
that's a whole nother conversation, but we only get one conversation here today, Matt Capps. And we're talking about his book, Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. Let's see if we can try to get in one more call and just talk a little bit about another issue as well. Lori in Grand Rapids, you're live on the air, but I need you to jump right to it.
Yes, thank you. I love this conversation. What I thought of right away was in the early 90s reading Francis Schaeffer's book, How Then Shall We Live, and how he spoke about art and the importance of art in the Christian life. And then also last fall, my family and I traveled to Barcelona, and I remember standing in the Sagrada Familia, a cathedral built by Antoni Gaudi, a Spanish architect, and I was brought to tears. The beauty of it. And of course, being a Christian, understanding my salvation, I'm sure, like your guest said, did inform my response to the beauty of.
So good.
Yes. So I think the Lord does draw our hearts to beauty because he's the creator of it.
Yeah, of course, ironically, Bonnie, you're calling from, Lori, excuse me, you're calling from Grand Rapids, which is a pretty strong, Dutch Reformed area where people de-emphasize, not every church, but many of them de-emphasize beauty in their churches. And I've been to that church, and they finally finished that church in Barcelona, which was nice. Took a long time, but I had similar reactions. So it's sort of like I'm a low church Protestant. You're in an area that's low church Protestant. We got. You want you to hold on the line, Lori. We're going to give you a copy of the book, Beauty, Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. In about a minute, tell us a little bit about how we as Christians should respond to beauty in churches. You talk about some in the book. Unpack it some there.
Yeah. So I think when you look at the craftsmanship of the people who help build our churches and adorn our churches with beautiful things, we have to remember that being created in the image of God means that our creativity, our sub creation activities, are unique as part of beings made in His image. We have this cultural mandate to create, to give meaning to the world. So, in that sense, creation is, in a sense, unfinished. We are to fashion the world's materials for His praise, an expression of our image reflecting capacities as human beings.
Stay with us. We're going to continue our conversation. Our phone number to join us, 877-548-3675. Hey, we're back at Stetzer Live. My guest is Matt Capps. We're talking about, well, beauty and awe and wonder. His book is Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. Giving away a few copies to brilliant calls and callers, which we've had brilliant callers today because that's how it happens here on Ed Stetzer Live. 877-548-3675. Again, 877-548-3675. Okay, let's go to some callers as well. Let's go to Leah in Chicago. Leah, you're live on the air with your question, your comment. Go right ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just feel so encouraged and vindicated by this conversation, to be quite honest, because, periodically I'm a believer, been following Christ for many years, and I frequently take road trips alone, solo, across the country by, driving. I never turn on the radio or anything, and I'm always trying to, it's such a worshipful experience. I see the Lord through so many different things, even in cities. And so my question is, did you go through a period of feeling like you had to justify to others or to yourself that this was indeed a good thing, a worshipful thing? Because I do find, I'm going away, I'm going to be on a 30 or 40-day road trip. Of course, I'll visit people, but my main goal is just to see and worship God, and people can't seem to connect with that because it's for me, it's such a beautiful experience.
I want to go on a 30 to 40-day road trip just looking at beautiful things. But okay, well, let's have you weigh in. Actually, before you go, hold on, though. I want to give you a copy of, right after you hear Matt's answer, we're going to give you a copy of Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. What do you think, Matt? Do we need to excuse this? Did you find a time where you need to defend this or what?
Well, in a sense, when you're having this conversation in the Protestant evangelical world, there's not many conversation partners. In fact, I remember being in seminary and scouring my systematic theology books to find anyone that would speak on beauty. And there was a couple guys that maybe spoke about the beauty of theology or beauty as a subcategory of God's attributes, but there wasn't much about beauty as a whole and how we as Christians respond to it. But again, I think that God has made us as embodied, you could say, sensory beings. That's where the word aesthetics comes from. It means the sensory of feelings. If you've been to the dentist and had an anesthetic, you know the opposite of the term. But God has made us as embodied sensory beings in a world that is teeming with delight, sounds, smells, and tastes, good gifts descending from above, for which we should give thanks and prompt us to return our praise back to God. And so I think, when you're standing in front of a piece of art and beholding it, or perhaps I should say being held by it, man, that can be a time where you just thank God for the artist who spent years in training to depict this. Or when you're standing in a dense forest and the light beams come piercing through the canopy pines. This is a moment of just the sweet benevolence of God in this world that He has created for us to enjoy. And so I don't think you should have to justify it, but you may have to explain it and why you do these things and tell people, like, this is the world that God gave us to enjoy, and I'm going to enjoy it, right? And I'm going to return my praise back to Him.
Yeah. Yeah, good, good. Again, hold on the line, Leah. We're going to give you a copy. Our producer's going to come on and give you a copy. Josh, in way down in Kokomo. I'm sure no one said that before. Josh, you're live on the air. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so in college, I had a class where I actually got to pick an artist to study, and I studied Thomas Cole from the Romanticism period in art. And one of his big ideas was that when he painted, he was capturing the fingerprints of God in nature, and he was delivering that beauty to be viewed and appreciated in a special way, in a way that people wouldn't normally just stop and view God's beauty in creation. So kind of like what you guys were just talking about, it's taking that opportunity to see the beauty that God has already given us by representing it in art.
And I just say, I love Thomas Cole, founder of the Hudson River School art movement. As a New Yorker,
Yep.
I love seeing those beautiful things as well. Super question, too. I want you to hold on the line because we're going to give you a copy of Matt's new book on art and beauty. But Matt, tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think, again, you're pulling us back to Romans 1, where God has made himself known in creation. Again, I think that is clarified through Scripture as special revelation. But when an artist creates art, they are imitating, as sub-creators are creating and communicating God. And so when we enjoy art, we are exhibiting our, again, imago Dei, the uniqueness we have as creatures to enjoy these things. I mean, we used to have a dog. Our dog did not go outside and, ponder the sunset, nor did he ever create a symphony. This is something unique in human beings. And so this is the part of the commission or the co-mission we've been given by God to build a meaningful world, this co-creational participation. And so your art mimics the creator God. And I just think you enter the world of art, you enter into the world of the artist and the philosophical background he brings. You're noticing his craft and the things that he's highlighting. That's an important part of living in this world that God has made in such a way that we can responsibly and just meaningfully enjoy these things.
Fascinating. Good, helpful conversation. Let's go to Anthony in Wheaton. Anthony, you're live on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I love art. I love architecture. But over the years that I've been sort of just loving what I'm seeing, I've had the question as a Christian about the frequent paintings of nakedness, in some beautiful art and brilliant painters. And I just was wondering, in light of the scripture speaking about nakedness, how we would really deal with that and think about that in that context.
Yeah, I would tell you that as a university professor, this is not an uncommon question, Anthony. I appreciate you calling and asking too. Remember to hold on. We're going to give you a copy of Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. And I will tell you, it's interesting because Christian schools sort of have to say, all right, what are we going to do when we're teaching people to paint the human form? So what do you think, Matt? How would you? It's tricky too because like we can think about Michelangelo's David, which is nudity. But simultaneously, there's different. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is where, as Christians, we understand the doctrine of sin, which permeates all of our experience of the world. Right? Light has gone from our eyes. Psalm 38, 1 Corinthians 13. Post-fall humanity only sees through a glass darkly, and I think one of the implications of that, which is seen so clearly in our modern world, is what pornography has done to our sense of beauty. And so we people today, when they are indulging in the demonic activity of pornography, are looking at the people depicted there as objects of desire rather than subjects created in the image of God. Now, I would think, in some ways, when it comes to nudity in art, that could be a matter of wisdom, depending on the person viewing it. I personally just try to protect myself from those because I know my own sinful heart and the way that my mind typically um, meanders that way. This is one of the reasons I watch very little TV. You can ask my wife about this because the images I see in television, even if they're even faintly suggestive, or captured in my heart and mind for a long time, that it's hard to wrestle out of. And so I think there are many Christians that disagree over this, and kind of go back and forth. And I think one of the struggles here when it comes to Christians and engaging with art is I think we want our art to have a authenticity to it to reflect the world that actually is. I think a lot of times Christians are more comfortable with art that maybe has what you would call a Pollyanna quality to it, which means irresponsible optimism, or it strikes us as kitschy, like it's gaudy and sentimental. It doesn't reflect the way that life is. So we're more comfortable with the artists that perhaps are maybe explicitly depicting Christian content or are overtly Christians because they're going to avoid those things. And so I think you have to use wisdom, prayerful judgment, and for you as a male, if you're drawn towards that thing, if it stirs up seductive longings in your heart, it's probably best to avoid it, if you will. Ed, I'd be curious to just hear from you on how different universities handle that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So, matter of fact, we have someone calling from a college. I'm going to have them answer that as well. But I do know that, like, for Christian university and colleges, with the exception of, I think, maybe Gordon College, most of them don't do kind of human form nudity in art classes. But I don't know enough to know the details about that. Hey, listen, we got to take a break. Our phone number is 877-548-3675. 877-548-3675. Hey, we're back, and we've got one segment left, and we need to kind of go through somewhat quickly on some of the questions that are here. So I want to ask my callers to just jump right in. Don't need to thank for the call, us taking the call. Just jump right in and make your question or your comment. We're going to go to Jim in Cleveland first. Jim, you're live on the air.
Hi, I'm really enjoying this. I'm a Christian artist, and when the Lord saved me, I asked him, what can I do with my art to magnify him? And in the George Sweeting tradition, he showed me that people do chalk drawings, and I do large chalk drawings for groups of people, and I play music while I draw. And it's just such a beautiful ministry because when I'm done, I have a chance to talk about the drawing and share my story and share a story that would lead to the gospel. And I just sense the Holy Spirit just opening the hearts of people as they listen to the music and as they watch me draw. And I just love doing it, and I'm excited about every invitation that I get.
Good deal, Jim. Thank you for your call. Great example as well. Let's go to Sherry in Wheaton, Illinois. You're live on the air.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in because I'm so appreciative of this conversation. I teach on spiritual formation, and a lot of philosophers have a lot.
Well, now, Sherry, I know you teach on spiritual formation. Sherry, I want you to. Where do you teach on spiritual formation?
Wheaton College, actually, in Wheaton, Illinois.
Well, I've heard of Wheaton College. I used to be the dean there, as you know. I used to be the dean in the program you teach in. So I'm glad you're here. But before we get to your full comment, where did you do your doctoral work? Just say that out loud with joy.
Biola University.
Correct. Okay, good. So, where I'm currently the dean. So I love that. Sherry Shackle, you're a real blessing. But go ahead and make your comment about art.
Yeah, I just maybe I'm more like your wife, Ed. I don't know where art just really makes me want to bow down and worship. But even in my classes, like I just mentioned the other day, how Kierkegaard talks about how human art can actually be kind of a scaffolding to put us in a posture of worship to God. Or Dallas Willard talks about how beauty is God's goodness in visual form. Beauty is so imperative, I think. And as part of this whole philosophical separation of our body from our spirit that kind of permeates our culture. It's a way of connecting, like God talks to us through our bodies, through our eyes, or our ears. And so, I think the first time people are mentioned as being filled with the Holy Spirit in Scripture is craftsmen and artists, actually, in the Old Testament. Also, I encourage my students a lot about this. If you're familiar with the book, The Anxious Generation, that came out recently, even in that, and he isn't a Christian necessarily, but in his study of anxiety, he points to the importance of filling our minds with inspiring things, some of that being beautiful things, and meditating on it. And then just heard another person yesterday on Moody that was talking about how our pathways are actually changed as we do that. And that's so congruent with Philippians 4, right? Where what we're supposed to think about and put into practice is how then God will guard our hearts and minds with his peace. So love.
I love that. I think it's worth, let me say too, though, it's worth noting that, Sherry teaches Christian formation. So one of the ways we form Christians is to them to walk in, that Philippians 4 passage with, think on these things that are good and beautiful and more. Sherry, thanks so much for your call, and thanks for your good work there at Wheaton College. One more call, and then I want to get your comments as we close. Penny, you're live on the air with your quick comment. Go right ahead.
What are suggestions for using our senses to appreciate beauty in God's creation?
Love it. Okay, Matt, now this is it. This is for you. This is the softball. This is the easy layup for you. So I want you to go back to, again, I really want to encourage people to get a hold of the book, Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. So you've heard three callers who all talked about the importance of this. Tell us, make the case in the last few minutes of our program of the importance of being drawn by beauty.
Yeah, in particular, that question is aiming at spiritual formation, and Christian spirituality is really about the Christian experience, the distinctly Christian experience of living in this world. It brings together the idea that the spiritual formation is a conversation between God's revelation and our reception, right? All of this shaped by the Word and the Spirit, but as the scaffolding of this world helps us lift our eyes to see Him. And so again, you have to learn how to come to your senses. So if you are a being, which you are, created in the image of God with unique capacities to enjoy sights, sounds, smells, you have to understand those as gifts from God that prompt you to worship. The other day I was on a walk and in our the park that sits adjacent to our neighborhood, and came down into a meadow, and there were deer everywhere. And I sat down on a bench and watched, and I began reading Psalm 42 as a deer pants after water, and let that be my prayer. I think about when I was on that same path with my daughter, and we sat on that same bench, and she's 8 years old, and she noticed that the grass was swaying in the wind, and the reflections off the pond looked like dancing fairies, I think is what she said. And I said, it is beautiful, and God made all this for you to enjoy because He loves you, and He wants it to point back to Him so that He can receive the praise. I would say those things. Just learn how to experience the world around you as a gift from God to be enjoyed, not to be used, but to enjoyed. And I think that is central to this conversation. Beyond that, I'd say, visit meadows and museums. When you're in a museum, take maybe Philippians 4:8, where we dwell on or take into account what is lovely and beautiful. When you're standing before a piece of art, you have to consent to it. In other words, you have to attentively examine it, look at the craftsmanship, look at the content, understand the context in which it was created, like what's the worldview of the artist, what is he trying to communicate, and let those experiences give you a deeper understanding of the Christian life, which again, the whole world around us is teeming with the beauty of God and is God's canvas by which He displays His goodness to us.
The right time for more calls, but let me just say, I love what Karen was actually calling in from Indianapolis and quoting Psalm 96, verse 9 says, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. And
Yes.
and so the idea of beauty being absent from the scriptures is not true, though that verse has a particular application to a particular time. So again, let's say, here's Ed Stetzer. I'm kind of a newbie at all this. You say museums and meadows, but I don't even know. I know Baroque art, and I like that. I love being outdoors and seeing beautiful things. But how can I all right, I want to learn more. One way to learn more, let me just say for folks, is to get a copy of Drawn by Beauty, Awe and Wonder in the Christian Life. What are some other ways? Because just going to museums, Meadows we get, but museums, there's a lot of museums. I don't even know where. Is modern art something I want to look at? Where do I start? Give me more.
Yeah, I would say there's actually a book that goes through like the 100 most influential artists from a Christian perspective, and it speaks about how they form their art and what it means, what it communicates. I would say just learn to read, learn on the arts from a Christian perspective. There's plenty of resources out there beyond what I've written. I would say when you go to the museum, learn what you can about the artists and the painting style or the sculpture style, whatever it is, the process by which it is made, and kind of immerse yourself in that world. And you'll learn to appreciate it in a new way. And I'd say talk with an artist, somebody that's in that field, that vocation. Learn about their process, learn about what experiences in life kind of provoked or developed their artistic style. Because all of that's connected. And so I would say those are probably the primary three things. Read more about art from a Christian perspective, visit a museum, talk to artists.
Love it. 30 seconds too. People, what are they going to get from the book if they get a copy of the book?
You're going to see that God is the source and substance of all beauty, that Christ is beauty in flesh. The Spirit opens our eyes to see the wonders of the world. And as we read the Word, we are enraptured by the beauty of God that one day we'll experience in full in the world to come. And that has implications on the arts, but you'll have to read that book to find that part out.
Let me thank my guest, Matt Capps, for joining me today. Thanks to our behind-the-scene teams here, my producer, Karen Hendren, associate producer, Lisa Jemke, Omar Mendoza, engineering today, and Titus on the phones. Today and every day, you can follow along on social media at Ed Stetzer Live. And remember, Ed Stetzer Live is a production of Moody Radio, which is a ministry of Moody Bible Institute. Thanks for listening.